Okay, I finally have time today. This news broke early this morning, my time, so this is old news by now. But this is not a breaking news channel, so I hope that's not what you're coming here for. Uh, Assange the UK has denied the US's request to extradite Julian Assange, where which is a wonderful victory for you and me, as well as Assange himself. He, of course, doesn't deserve what he's going through, but he's taking his lumps because he's done a good job, and that's why they want to go after him. Now, I guess you could say that they didn't refuse the extradition on really any substantive grounds. It was, but it wasn't procedural either. They didn't say that, for example, we're not going to extradite him because the U.S. wants to, try him for something that's ridiculous and that, is a threat to human rights, even though that's exactly true. The U.S. wants to prosecute Julian Assange for distributing information that he was given. That is, a threat to anyone's right of free speech. When the Washington Post back in the 70s, or was it the late 60s, did the exact same thing as Julian Assange with the Pentagon Papers, none of them went to prison. None of them were charged with anything. Even to suggest such a thing would be seen as, as outright tyranny. But because Julian Assange is not a part of the American media cartel, he's not afforded the same rights. And in fact, the U.S. even has the gall to charge him, even though his supposed crime wasn't committed in America, and he's not an American, and by any reasonable stretch should have should not be accountable to the U.S. government for things that he chooses to say or publish. So, considering that the UK judge considered all of these things to be reasonable, all these charges brought up against Assange, why was it exactly that this extradition was refused? Well, ironically, it's because of the poor prison, the poor conditions in American prisons, which is kind of funny. I think that would be kind of ironic to an ordinary American, since federal prisons have the reputation of being like country clubs. Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure that I would ever want to go to any prison. But that's, for better or for worse, that's the reputation that federal prisons tend to have amongst the American population. Well, this judge felt that, the conditions in federal prisons are inhumane, and that someone like Julian Assange, who's diagnosed with some sort of depression, would be at a severe risk in one of those places. He'd probably kill himself, just like, again, this is very ironic here. She cited the suicide, and I'm doing air quotes there, of Jeffrey Epstein, saying, well, if Jeffrey Epstein can commit suicide, then so can Julian Assange, and I can't reasonably, discharge this guy into U.S. care if I know that the U.S. is going to let him kill himself. Which I have to say, that's a pretty sly move there, to cite Epstein's suicide and say, gee, we can't hand Assange over to the Americans because the Americans might not stop him from killing himself. Wink, wink. And so maybe this judge is a little more red-pilled than I would give her credit for on the surface. But unfortunately, since she didn't refuse the extradition on substantive grounds, I'm not really certain that the UK could be seen as really giving much asylum to Assange over this whole issue. I guess potentially the U.S. could try and extradite him again and cite, and try and remedy whatever this problem this woman had, and say, oh, no, we'll put him in a very special room where he won't be able to kill himself, or prove to the judge that, hey, if we'll make sure he's secure and doesn't wink, wink, kill himself. But then, of course, they could just appeal this, which, maybe they could try and bring the case again from the beginning. I don't know if there's such a thing as double jeopardy in the UK. But for now, all they're going to try and do is appeal this particular case. And you don't have a right to an appeal in the United Kingdom, so hopefully they aren't granted that appeal. And so now, apparently, Assange will be granted bail at some point. while, they're waiting to decide on that appeal. But if either the U.S. loses that appeal or they're denied the appeal, I believe Assange would be free to go at that point within the United Kingdom. Now, if he goes to another country, the U.S. would try to extradite him then, which I guess that would mean that Assange would try to go to some place like Russia or somewhere else, maybe that doesn't even have an extradition treaty, who would give him asylum. So the good news is this isn't the end for Assange. I wouldn't say there's light at the end of the tunnel yet, but there's a glimmer of hope. There is at least a path forward for him now, whereas before it looked like he was marching down he was saying before like he was walking the Green Mile. That's what I'd say. Or I guess the actual phrase is just walking the mile. The Green Mile is just a Stephen King book. It's not really a common phrase, I don't think. I think that moving forward, Assange will be a very important figure. He has a lot of good connections. I do not want to see him totally silenced, and I know that if he can get out of this situation, he will go back, full speed ahead with what he was doing before with WikiLeaks. And considering how much tension has been ratcheted up here in the United States, some good leaks, I think, would have a very positive effect. It would perhaps confirm or expose a lot of what the government has been doing and what the government will continue to do. I think that many Americans are primed now more than ever for questioning their government, and the content and the leaks, that he would be putting out, I think would have a lot more. They would reach a much broader audience than they once did. Collateral Murder was a very important video, but there's a lot more people open to things like that nowadays than there were, when he originally published that video. So I'm glad that I was able to take a break for a day from American politics, at least somewhat. I guess this is still pretty closely related to America, but it's a foreign policy thing, which for a long time that's what I've been really passionate about on this channel, because not enough people talk about it. It is the most important issue, and it is something which this president Trump has not been great on, but it's something which the next president, or at least who we presume to be the next president, barring any miracles on Wednesday, is absolutely awful on. Joe Biden is going to be terrible on these sorts of issues, and if Trump doesn't pardon Assange by the time he leaves, Biden and his folks will do everything they can to make sure that Assange ends up dead. So, with that said, if you gained anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day, and I'd hate to have you miss one. So, I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.